Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Ruth Elsley. We warmly welcome the family of Lance Corporal Walter Bruce Fyfe, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Walter Bruce Fyfe. Walter Fyfe was born in 1895 in Bendigo, Victoria, the son of local grazier and butcher James Fyfe and his wife Annie. Walter had 3 siblings and received his education as a boarder at Melbourne's Scotch College. A keen student, Fyfe received a scholarship to study at Oxford University in England, but chose instead to return to his family's farm in Boort, where he worked as a grazier. Fyfe was 19 when he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 2nd of November 1914. In March 1915, he was assigned to the 13th Light Horse Regiment. He embarked from Melbourne on board the troopship Persic in May. Fyfe arrived in Gallipoli in early September 1915. As the light horse was considered unsuitable for operations on the peninsula, the 13th was deployed without horses. Fyfe spent 3 months there, mostly manning the trenches around Lone Pine, before the Allied evacuation from the peninsula in December. Fyfe then returned to Egypt and continued training with his unit until early 1916. At this time, the AIF was in the process of expanding due to an influx of new enlistments. The 13th Light Horse was divided into divisional cavalry squadrons, most of which were sent to the Western Front. Fyfe arrived in France in May 1916, and by July the 13th Light Horse was reformed as its own cavalry regiment. Limited by conditions on the Western Front, Fyfe and his unit were employed in traffic control, security, and prisoner escort tasks, as well as occasional reconnaissance, rather than taking part in trench warfare. Fyfe served at Pozières, Fricourt, and Fleur, and was promoted to Lance Corporal in September 1917. In June 1918, Fyfe was transferred from the Light Horse to the 57th Battalion. His first major battle with this new unit was to be at the Battle of Amiens, having overcome a major German offensive in March 1918. The Allies saw their opportunity to deliver a decisive blow that would turn the tide of the war. The offensive was to make use of tanks, planes, infantry and artillery in an effort to overwhelm the enemy. In the early hours of the morning, on the 8th of August 1918, Allied planes dropped smoke bombs to disorientate the enemy. This was followed by a relentless artillery barrage, while troops and tanks advanced across no man's land. The enemy were taken by surprise and were quickly devastated by the offensive. The combination of planes, tanks, infantry and artillery was so effective that in just 3 hours, the enemy's front lines had been completely overrun. By the end of the offensive, the Allies had taken more than 29,000 prisoners and had liberated 116 towns, capturing their objectives and effectively changing the course of the war. But these successes were not without cost. The fighting continued for several days, and by the end, Australian casualties amounted to almost 3,000 killed, missing or wounded. Among the dead was 23-year-old Lance Corporal Walter Fyfe, who was killed on the first day of the offensive. He was buried at Heath Cemetery just outside of the French town of Villers-Bretonneux. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Walter Bruce Fyfe, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID and wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.